Hello everybody, it's Tito Capote, and we're back with another deck profile. This one is the long version. Now, before I say anything, most of the time on this channel, I don't really play meta decks. I don't really build meta decks, because I think that it's kind of boring when your deck is so oppressive that your opponent can't play. I like playing with someone. I like actually playing a game. But one thing that I'm going to say about this deck, Tearlaments, by the way, if you didn't look at the title, is that the deck is very skill intensive. It might not look that way because of um, how you've seen plays online. It's like, oh, you just mill and you win. But that's not true. You have to keep an active count of the effects that you've used in deck, how many cards are in deck, and how likely it is for you to mill a combo piece, mill one of the cards that you need to mill to be able to go off, or specifically what card you need to mill, because it's not always the same. Sometimes you've already used the effects and your opponent's interrupted, or you have to do certain plays in a certain way so that you can get more value off of it. And it's harder than I've found most meta decks to be, which is really cool. And again, this is just my opinion. It might not be right, but at least for me, it's more fun to play this deck because not only is there like that little added bonus of like the randomness of milling your cards and like every hand being different, even if you have the same cards in hand, just because of the order your deck is in. But which I really love, by the way. Like, every hand is a completely different play unless you're really good at the deck, which I'm still not. I've done really well with the deck because I think I'm a decent player, but like, I really like that added level of difficulty, and it makes it a lot more fun than most meta decks are. And also, I love fusion summoning, and I think the deck is kind of really fun in that respect. It's just all fusion summoning, and there's like one link monster in the extra deck. I'm not playing the Ultimate Slayer package because I'm not rich. I traded for most of this, which is really cool. But and I had a little bit extra money, but I don't want to spend. I pulled one Ultimate Slayer, but I don't want to spend an extra like $120 just to get 2 cards, you know. Anyway, let's start with the main deck. In this version, this is the longer version of the deck profile where I'm gonna have a discussion on the cards. Say what they all do, read what they all do, and then explain my choice in cards, my choice in ratio. And yeah, anyway, let's get started. So one thing I'm going to say first is that all the Tearlaments cards, as the deck is right now, I think you need to play at 3, because the more chance you have to mill one of these cards, the better. And also because you want to see them in your hand. If you see them in your hand, you don't have to mill them later, so which is just even better, right? Because most of them get their effects all of them get their effects when they're sent to the graveyard, and they do added stuff when they're summoned or special summoned in their effect way, and most of them need, not most of them, but a lot of them need, actually no, just one, but it's better to have them in your hand than it is in the deck. Anyway, that's I guess most Yu-Gi-Oh cards. But anyway, let's get started. So I don't know how to pronounce these cards very well, so let's try our best. So Tearlaments, Sharon? I don't know. Sharon. Let's go with Sharon. So what this card does is during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard. This is really cool because if you activate the effect and it's negated with something like an Ash, you don't have to discard the monster with your hand. Unfortunately, that's also a bad thing for this deck because you kind of want to discard the monster from your hand. But say it's like a DD Crow or a Ghost Spell, and you don't really want it in your, and you want it, but it's like not really necessary to discard. It's like, oh, I get to keep it anyway. Yeah. Anyway, and then if you do send the top 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard, most of the effects that summon have the mill effect, except so the 3 what I call main monsters, and there's Rhino Heart, which is like the starter monster, I guess. And then if this deck is sent to the graveyard by card effect, except during the damage step, you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck by placing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, deck, or field to the graveyard, including this card from your graveyard on the bottom of the deck in any order. So they shuffle themselves back to fusion summon, which is crazy because you're just getting more fuel for the other turns, and you never really run out of fuel unless you mill the cards that you don't want to mill. But even then, like, you just use them as material for other fusion summons, which is crazy. But anyway, that's her. Then we've got this card, which again, let's try pronouncing it. Merly, whatever. This card is a normal special summon. You can send the top 3 cards from your deck to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard, they all have the effect of fusion summon. So it has the fusion summon effect when it hits the graveyard. It's the same one. Shuffle back cards from the graveyard. Now, I'm going to say, a lot of people say that, like, if you want to search something, you're going to search the Shireen or the Merly because it sends more cards to the graveyard. And that's what I've heard a lot of people at locals say, but I think that's not true. So Merly is a good normal summon, but it doesn't guarantee a fusion summon, right? Unless you have Poly in hand or some way to get the fusion summon going, it's not smart to search this or the Merly or the Shireen. Usually these are going to be extra or like used as fusion material. At least that's the way I play because I found that to be the smarter play. You want to guarantee that you get the fusion summons, and with that, I think Rhino Heart is the best normal summon in the deck, and then you keep these as backup, right? Because these can be special summon, these can be extra things in your deck that just help your deck go off, right? So if you have this and the Rhino, like a Shireen and or a Merly and a Rhino Heart in hand, always go for the Rhino Heart just because it's a guaranteed fusion summon if it goes off, right? And they both lose to the same things. They both lose to Ash, they both lose to Imperm, they both lose to whatever. But the Rhino Heart, it not only does it have more attack, in which because this one has 800 and that one has 15, but also if the Rhino Heart, if it goes off, you get a fusion summon, you get your combo, whereas the Merly, it's not guaranteed. Unless it's late game and all you have in your deck are the Tearlaments, then it's like fine because it's more, there's more chance because you've already milled out most of your deck. But in starting, I think Rhino Heart's the better normal summon, but I'll get to him, her. I don't know what they are, but whatever. Then we're going to Havness. So what this card does is when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, quick effect, so you can do this during your opponent's turn, and that's why a lot of people say, oh, you can make turn 0 Winda, which is true, but you have to be very lucky to be able to do that because you have to mill a lot of cards, or just get lucky and mill or open a Shaddoll monster and this, and then open and then send Tearlaments, which is turn 0 Winda is very inconsistent. It happens sometimes, but it's not like the main focus of the deck, right? It's just this deck is really explosive. It plays through a lot of interruption, and yeah, it just goes off. But anyway, you can do that, and if you do, send the top 3 cards from your deck to your hand, and it has the fusion summon clause, or if it's sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle back the cards. Then Rhino Heart. This is the different, I'm missing one because my friend is lame. No, I ordered these a while ago, but for some reason, the guy has just taken a while to send them. He's going to send them, I think, sometime this week, and then I'll get them soon. But until then, I'm missing a few cards, but look, I made proxies. But anyway, let's go over what Rhino Heart does. This card is actually very different from the others. This is a very big enabler of the deck, and I think it's really good. It's, I think, the best normal summon. But again, you might think differently, and if you do, please let me know and explain why, because I think my reasoning's sound. Especially in early game, where you want to get a guaranteed fusion summon, and you have less chance of doing so, even though you have a lot of cards in your deck. But I don't know. I feel like those should be extra stuff, if not, yeah, but that's just me. But what this card does is, if this card is normal or special summon, you can send one Tearlaments monster from your deck to the graveyard, so you get a guaranteed fusion summon if it goes off, unless they have DD Crow or Ghost Spell or whatever, then that just sucks. But if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field, and if you do, send one Tearlaments card from your hand to the graveyard. So this is an enabler in which, if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can discard a card from your hand and activate its effect to fusion summon, and going off again. So it's really cool, but it does require a card in your hand, which you don't always have, but that's just the way it is, I guess. But anyway, next. To King of the Swamp. This is a really cool inclusion of the deck. Unfortunately, a lot of people are saying that you're going to cut this out once the Shizu stuff comes out. I don't know if I will, because this will enables a lot of stuff that's just really cool. Maybe I'll still play it. Maybe I'll play it at 1. Maybe I'll play it at 2, but I don't know. But I think this is a really cool card, and it's been one of my cards, like one of the cards that I've just always thought was awesome since I was little. I would play this in my my DS game with the elemental heroes just to be able to get more fusion summons, and it was the best thing ever. But anyway, what this card does is this card can be used as substitute for any fusion material whose name is specifically listed on the fusion card. So usually you're going to use this to summon the Millennium Miser Strict. You're going to use this to fusion summon the Kaleido Heart, because they have Rhino Heart and what's it called, Relinquished on their text. But you can also use this to search a poly, and the poly is really good. I'll get to that when I get to poly, but it's a really good card in this deck, especially. And I think it's just really cool, and I would play it at 3, but it's expensive now, and I think 2 is better, honestly, just because you can mill it a lot, and if you open it, it's great, but it's seeing it more than 1 isn't the best all the time, because, like, you want to be summoning Kalos most of the time instead of other things. But again, that's just me. You might think differently, and if you do, please let me know in the comments. Next, we're going to do the Shaddoll monsters that we chose. So, you've probably seen this a lot online, and I think these are the best choices, unless you want to go more of a Shaddoll route, which I don't really want to. I like to keep it pure, because I like the pure versions of decks more. Again, that might be wrong, but I think it's cooler. But anyway, 1 Shaddoll Squamata and 1 Shaddoll Beast. What Shaddoll Squamata does is basically the only thing you need to know. You're never going to... I mean, you can set it if you have absolutely nothing else in your hand, but if you do, then you're down bad. Same thing with Beast. Actually, Beast can't say because he's a high level. But what Squamata does, the important effect is that it sends a Shaddoll monster from your deck to grave, and usually that's going to be Beast. And what Beast does is it draws you a card. So you're going to use these to summon Winda, and you get you advantage while doing it, right? So very good. Then for the hand traps, I've said before in other deck profiles in this format that I think hand traps aren't as important as board breakers and stuff like that, but this deck can play the hand traps, and especially because I think that 1 hand trap in particular is important in this deck. I'm playing 2 Ghost Bell and 2 DD Crow. Honestly, again, missing 1 because this one actually I lent it to my friend, and then they lost it, and now I'm sad. But I had a playset, and now I playset and then 1, and I lent him a playset and he lost it. But anyway, the reason why I'm playing 2 and 2 is because I think they're both really good, and I think they basically do the same thing. DD Crow is a little bit better this format, but the reason I'm playing Ghost Bell, and I would rather play 3 Ghost Bell and no DD Crow if you don't want to cut down on something. I'd only play Ghost Bell. In this deck particular, in Splight, I definitely play a DD Crow. In any other deck, I'd play DD Crow. But the reason that I play Ghost Spell over DD... actually, let's go over what DD Crow does, sorry. So what DD Crow does is quick effect, you can discard this card to the graveyard, then target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard and banish that target. Which is really good because it stops Tearlament plays, it stops Splight plays, it lets at least Splight recover. Actually, no, it does stop Splight plays if you banish their frogs and stuff. And the reborn of their ranked level link 2s. But Ghost Bell, what it does is when a card effect is activated that includes this effect, quick effect, you can discard this card and negate that activation. Add a card from the graveyard to the hand, deck, or extra deck, special summon a monster card from the graveyard, or banish a card from the graveyard. So this does basically the same thing as DD Crow, except it doesn't... It keeps the card in the graveyard, which sometimes is worse. But the reason I'd play this over DD Crow in this deck particular is because this card is anti-DD Crow, because DD Crow banishes from the graveyard, so you can use this to negate it. And same thing with Called by the Grave. And the reason why I think it's better is because your deck has trouble against those cards, right? If they open a DD Crow and they DD Crow the right thing and you have no follow-up, your turn ends. But if you have the Ghost Spell, you can negate that and keep going regardless. So what I might do is I actually might cut out the DD Crows and just play 3 Ghost Spell. But I found that 2 and 2 is better because the Ghost Spell, you see it, but you also see the DD Crow, which is just usually better in a lot of scenarios because it stops them from being able to use that card in the graveyard. But again, Ghost Spell is just good at defense in this deck, right? DD Crow is more of a... I guess you can DD Crow their DD Crow, but if they Ghost Spell, but if they Called by, then you're kind of screwed. But it's just, I think it's really useful in the deck. And that's just me. But yeah, anyway. Let's go to the next card. So the next card that I'm going to I'm gonna go over other board breakers in the deck. So I'm playing 3 Dark Ruler no more. I don't really like Forbidden Droplets in the deck. I think that Dark Ruler is just better. Yeah, you don't get to OTK that turn, but a lot of the times in this deck, you can OTK really easily in later turns just because of all the advantage you get, just because one card is a starter usually. And especially later on in the game when you've already gone through all of your deck and have less cards in your deck, you have more chance of milling those Tearlaments cards. But the Dark Ruler, it's just, I think, better because you don't have to discard, and Forbidden Droplets discards for cost, it doesn't discard for effect, so it doesn't trigger your Tearlaments cards, which is, which makes Forbidden Droplets better as a card, but not better for this deck, if that makes sense. So you might think, oh, why not play both? It's because I prefer playing other cards, which you're going to see soon. One card in particular I think is really good this format, especially for decks that aim to go first. Even if you go second, it's really good, but I'll get into that in a bit. So Dark Ruler, what it does is negate the effects of all fate-sub monsters your opponent controls until the end of the turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, if this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage. Neither opponent can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. So a lot of the boards you're going to face from Splight, from Tearlaments, are going to be very oppressive, very hard to get over with the window, with the negates, with the Millennium Eyes. It's just going to be rough. And cards like this that like just say, no, you can't do any of that, just really help you stay in the game, right? And yeah, and you're going to be seeing a lot of turn 3 Dark Ruler, because a lot of people are going to be main decking cards like this, just cards like Forbidden Droplet, cards like Dark Ruler on later turns that aren't the first turn, or if they're going second, just because that's just the way it's going to be. Then one Change of Heart, I think this is really cool because one of the things that I found comes up a lot is that a lot of people use a lot of Xyz monsters this format just because Toad, just because whatever, Bahamut Shark, they keep it on the field. A lot of the Split doesn't keep Bahamut on the Shark on the field, but you can if you want, if you're playing 2 elements. But Change of Heart is really cool because you can steal that Xyz monster, go into attack with it, and go into Zeus, which is just really funny. And it has come up a lot of times online, so I really think that that Change of Heart is really cool in that manner, and it really helps the deck, and it's just a really good card in general, especially going second for breaking boards. But yeah, then next we're going to go with 1 Instant Fusion because this card is at 1. This card is actually crazy because not only can you go into Millennium Eyes to insulate your plays, you can also go into Kick Kalos, because Kick Kalos is a level 5, and that means that it's a play starter, and a better play starter than any of your normal summons, because even if their effect gets negated on field, you can still use it as something to be able to mill more cards and get more fusion summons, which is just really cool. So with this is basically just pay 1,000 life points special summon level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck. It can't attack, and it's destroyed at the end phase, but that doesn't matter because you're going to be using it. Then a card that I think is really cool in the deck, Mass Change 2. So I am a hero player at heart, so I had to include this, but not only did I include it because of that, it's because this card is actually kind of insane in the deck. It's really good, and I'll explain why. So discard 1 card and target 1 face-up you control monster that you control that has a level. That's the cost. Send it to the graveyard, so this card has to resolve for it to be sent to the graveyard. Also, after that, if it left the field by this effect, special summon from your extra deck one masked hero monster with the same attribute but higher level than the attribute of the monster. So most of your main deck monsters, except for Rhino Heart, are darks. Your Kalos is a level 5 dark. Darklaw is a level 6 dark. So you can summon Kick Kalos, use this on Kick Kalos, get it into graveyard, mill 5 cards, have a Darklaw on the field so they can't DD Crow anything. They can still Ghost Spell, but if they play Ghost Spell, then they're doing something that a lot of people aren't doing. A lot of people are playing more DD Crow than Ghost Spell. I just think it's a good inclusion in this deck because of the reasons I said. But anyway, so you're insulated from DD Crow. And also, Darklaw kind of kills this format. It's really good. And you get to trigger your monster effects, which is just crazy to me. It's just really good. And yeah, anyway, one Foolish Burial, because Foolish Burial is play starter also, and it also gets materials in the graveyard for cards that you want to fusion summon. So if you don't have a Shaddoll monster in your graveyard, you can just use this to get a Shaddoll monster in your graveyard. If you want the extra draw to try to get more things off of Shaddoll Beast, if you want to get them out of your deck just to deck thin, or if you don't have any play starters, you just Foolish Burial and you use and you fusion summon using the Tearlaments. Then one Rhoda to get a Rhino Heart, because it's the only warrior monster, but Rhino Heart is kind of your best starter. So Rhoda is what it does. Oh, I forgot to say what they do. This one just sends a card from deck to graveyard. That's all the text. And then this one, what it does is just add a level 4 warrior monster from your deck to your hand, which is, again, not a difficult effect, but a really good one. Then one Called by the Grave, just to instill your plays and stop your opponent's plays. Target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, and if you do until the end of this turn, the next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects on the field of monsters with the same original name. Then we're playing 2 Polymerization, because I like this art more, but I only had this one and my secret rare that's in my hero deck, and I didn't want to take it out of there. So send one fusion. So this just basically allows you to fusion summon. That's it. It's different. It's a long text, and I don't want to read it. But this lets you fusion summon, and it's really good because even if your plays all get interrupted, if you have 2 monsters on the field, you can or in your hand, you can make Kikalos and then activate their effects to fusion summon as because they're sent to the graveyard by card effect, right? Or if you just have extra monsters on your field and you have like a Shaddoll in hand, you can make Wind at the end of the turn. It's really good, and it's searchable with King of the Swamp, which is really cool. Then we're playing 1 Terraforming to search your field spell. Add 1 field spell card from your deck to your hand. And then this card is crazy, the field spell. I'm missing one because the guy didn't ship it, but anyway, when this card is activated, you can add 1 Tearlaments monster or 1 Visa Starfrost from your deck to your hand, and fusion summon monsters and Tearlaments monster you control gain 500 attack. So that's every fusion monster you summon. All of your boss monsters just gain attack for absolutely no reason. Your Predaplanetary goes to belly up 3,200. Darklaw is 2,900 with this, which is crazy. And your Kikalos 28. Your Kaleido Heart, it's 35. So anyway, the important effect, actually that's pretty important, but the other good effect is if a Tearlaments monster you control or in your deck is shuffled into the deck or extra deck, except during the damage step, you can target 1 card in the field and destroy it. So not only does this clear your opponent's board, but it also starts your plays, or it keeps your plays going, because if you summon your Tearlaments monster and then mill another one, and you can pop that one to just keep going, which is really cool, especially turn 1, when you have like basically nothing in your deck, or when you have full resources, like I should say. But yeah, anyway, then we're going on to Tearlaments Meta Noise. This card is really good. So if you control Tearlaments monster or Visa Starfrost, target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and change face-down defense position. Then send 1 Tearlaments monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if this card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, you can target 1 Tearlaments monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, which is good, but the first effect is the important part. So it's a Book of Moon that also starts your plays on your opponent's turn. So this is really cool. And it just gives you advantage when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, which is really cool as well. Then we're playing 1 Crime. This card isn't as good. Its mill effect sucks, and its on-field effect is hard to activate, but I still want to play 1 because it does come up, and an Omni Negate is pretty good. Anyway, let's go over what it does. When a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated while you control Tearlaments monster or Visa Starfrost, negate the activation. If you do, shuffle that card into the deck, and then send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard. This card is sent to the graveyard by card effect. You can target 1 banished Tearlaments monster, activate, add it to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. So you get an Omni Negate with it, but you also get what's it called, the stuff, you also get the card back from banished, which doesn't really come up, but this card is a card that I want to highlight. This is the reason the card that the deck is 42 cards instead of 40 cards. If it weren't if it weren't for a lot of people will say, oh, side deck Pointer of the Red Lotus, because you don't know if you're going first or second. But I stand by the fact that, and I'm going to explain my reasoning so you guys understand why I think what I think. But I think it should be main deck, because on turn 1, it gets rid of board breakers that your opponent has, which everyone is going to be main decking. So it lets you stay in the game when you have a board established. But even if that weren't the case, and even if it didn't get rid of the best card in your opponent's hand on when they start their turn, on turn, if you're going second, on turn 3, your opponent most of the time is going to be recovering from a broken board, because with this deck it's crazy. You can break boards like nobody's business, and same thing with Splight, same thing with whatever. But the reason why I want to play this main deck, even if you're going second, is because of that comeback that they're going to have to make. And because of the way the format is, a lot of people are going to be playing board breakers in the main deck. And that means in turn 1, when there's nothing on the board, they're not going to be using them. They're going to be keeping them in their hand. So when you break your opponent's board and have your board established, it's going to be really cool if you can just flip a card and say, oh, hey, you know that board breaker that you saved for turn 1? Yeah, you don't get to use that anymore. And then you just have everything to stop them, because you're playing one of the best decks in the format. And so I think a pointer main deck is just really good. I think it's insane. But that's just what I think. I might be wrong, and it's worked really well so far, because most of the time, like I said, your opponent's gonna have a Dark Ruler turn 3, and with a pointer you can just get rid of that and make it so they have to actually play through your board instead of just doing whatever they want, right? But anyway, let's get into the extra deck now. So first we're going to do the Xyz cards, because the Xyz cards are the different cards. So we are playing Xyz cards. One Time Thief Redoer. So what this does is once per turn during the standby phase, you can attach the top card of your opponent's deck to this card as material. Quick effect, you can detach up to 3 different types of material to this card and apply the following effects. If it's a monster, banish this card until the end phase. If it's a spell, draw 1 card. If it's a trap, place 1 card from opponent controls to the bottom of the deck. So the reason why you play this card isn't because it's a good card. It is a good card for sure, but it's because it detaches for effect. So if your opponent like messes up with all your plays, he does like whatever, and you have 2 level 4s on the field, you can overlay for this, wait till your opponent's turn, and then detach the monsters to banish this or do all its effects or whatever, and then get the effect of your Tearlaments cards to fusion summon, which just makes it so crazy. And even if like you just have 2 monsters on your field, and you can do it during your turn because you have cards in the graveyard because you haven't activated that particular effect, then that's just even better. And then we're playing Bahamut Shark. Once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, special summon rank 3, 1 rank 3 or lower water monster, water Xyz monster from your extra deck. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? But this card can't attack for the rest of the turn. So this is used to summon out Totally Awesome. This card, I don't want to read everything. There's a frog part which you can summon frogs from your deck, but the main part is that I can omni-negate any card by attributing a awkward monster from your field, so it's going to attribute itself, and then it can add a water monster from your graveyard to your hand when it is sent to the graveyard. So it can either add itself back to recycle itself, or add one of your Tearlaments monsters that you haven't used. And then Zeus, Zeus does a lot of stuff, but you can detach 2 materials from this card, send all other cards to the field to the graveyard. It's not once per chain, but usually you're going to only have 1 material for this, 1 use of this, just because the deck doesn't play Downard, and it shouldn't play Downard because whatever. But like I said, with Change of Heart, this card is Zeus is especially good, because there are a lot of people playing stuff like Abyss Dweller, stuff like just Xyz monsters in the format, just because like Baguska, just rank 4s that are really easily accessible, and rank 2s as well, with Splight. And what you can do is you can Change of Heart your opponent's Xyz monster, attack with it, because Splight monsters are all really tiny and whatever. So you can just steal it, make Zeus, and clear the board, and then just go off next turn, right? So I think that Zeus is really cool in the deck. Next, we're going to go into 1 Millennialize Restrict. So what this does is when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can activate this card, or equip 1 monster your opponent controls from the field or graveyard onto this card. Then monsters with that effect, with that card name, its effects are negated and cannot attack, and this card gains attack equal to that attack. And this is once per turn, but you can activate it more than once, which is really cool. Again, this is 1 card that has to be mailed out to me still, but I still want to include it because it's really good, especially if you can especially when you can summon it off instant fusion. And if they have a DD Crow, you just equip the DD Crow and they can't DD Crow. And that's just really cool. Then we're playing one Winda. So what Winda does is must first be fusion summoned, cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effect. Each player can only special summon monster from once per turn while this card is face up on the field. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one Shaddoll spell trap from your graveyard, add it to your hand. So it's really good for stopping your opponent. But you also have to be aware that you can't special summon more than once as well. But usually that doesn't matter if you can stick Winda on the field. Then we're playing two Predaplant Dracostapelia. So what this does is once per turn, as a quick effect, you can target one monster, face-up monster your opponent controls, place one Predator counter on it. If it's level 2 or higher, it becomes level 1 as long as it has a Predator counter. So this is really good, and negate the effects of activated effects of your opponent's monsters that have Predator counters. Now this is really good because it not only is an effect negation, but against Splight needs to have a level rank or link 2 monster on the field to do any plays, and if they don't, then that sucks for them because they can't do anything. So if you Predaplant their normal summon, usually they won't be able to do anything unless they have unless they have a starter in their hand, which is the spell card that just quick effect summons from the deck. Not quick effect, actually, yeah, it is quick effect. But anyway, yeah. So the Predaplant Dracostapelia is really good, and you can make it really easily with the cards in your deck. Then I'm playing one Garuda, Wings of Resonant Life. This card is easy to make, and it basically just draws you a card, which is good. It's just an extender. I would, honestly, if I had Ultimate Slayer, I would play, instead of the... actually, I forgot to mention Abyss Dweller, but instead of Abyss Dweller and this, I would play just cards for the Ultimate Slayer, just because it's better, I think. But that's just me. Then we have Abyss Dweller. I forgot to put this in with the Xyz monsters, but while this card has an Xyz material that was originally water, all water monster you control gain 500 attack. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, and any cards that activate in your opponent's graveyard cannot be activated this turn. So that card is just basically for the mirror match. Your opponent can't do anything unless they have Dark. Even if they have Dark Ruler, if you do that during the draw phase, they can't do anything that turn, and that just lets you come back and kill them the next turn. Then one Dark Charmer Gloomy. Most of your main deck monsters are dark monsters, and this card is really good. So you can target one dark monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon to your zone by this card points to. If this link summon card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by opponent's card effect while in a monster zone, you add one dark monster with 1500 less defense from your deck to your hand, which is a lot of your cards. So dark is really good. Then the Dark Claw. Again, I'll go over why this card is good in the deck. So I went why over Mass Change 2 is good in the deck, but I didn't go over why Dark Claw is good. So when this card, it can't be special summoned by any ways other than Mass Change. Any card sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. That's the important effect. But also, once per turn, if your opponent adds a card from the deck to your hand, except during the draw phase or damage step, you can banish one random card from your opponent's hand. Now, why is this so good? Because most of the decks in the format have to use the graveyard to be good. So, Tearlaments, everything happens in the graveyard. Splight, most of their extensions rely on the graveyard. All their frogs, all their Splight Jet, most things that they can do rely on the graveyard. And if your opponent doesn't have a graveyard, they can't do all of that. So I think Dark Claw is really good in that. I only play one because he is recyclable, because your Tearlaments shuffle back to the deck to fusion summon, right? So if your Dark Claw gets cleared, you just put it back in the extra deck. Then two Kikalos. This is another card that I'm waiting for. But anyway, if this card is special summon, you can take one Tearlaments card from your deck, add it to your hand, or send it to the graveyard. You can target one monster you control, special summon one Tearlaments monster from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, send the targeted monster to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can send the top 5 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And yeah, so it's a really good extender, but like I said, you make Dark Claw off with this, and it's just really funny. And you can search your spell traps to go off next turn during your opponent's turn, and make sure you have plays during your opponent's turn. Then, honestly, Dark Claw is my favorite kind of deck because he's Dark Claw. But like, this is my favorite Tearlaments card because I just think it's really cool. I really love its effect, and it's just the artwork is really cool. But anyway, let's go over what it does. It cannot be used as fusion material, so that means your opponent can't super poly it. And if this card is special summoned, or if an Aqua monster is sent to the graveyard by card effect while this card is on the field, you can target one card your opponent controls, shuffle into the deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon one card, and if you do, send one Tearlaments card from your deck to the graveyard. So not only is this just a shuffle back to... This is basically Nightmare Unicorn, but better, because you can use it when it's summoned, or when a card is shuffled back into your when a Tearlaments card is sent, when Aqua monster is sent to your deck to the graveyard. But also it stays on the field, because if it's sent to the graveyard by any means, it just comes back and then starts your plays. It's crazy, but it's also harder to make because it's a Tearlaments, Rhino Heart, and 2 Aqua monsters. But with King of the Swamp and with all the milling you do, it's pretty easy to make. But I recommend making it during your opponent's turn, or during your turn too. But yeah, also I do want to go over Ultimate Slayer. I have 1 copy, I don't have 3. But I'm gonna go over it just so you guys know what I'm talking about. So when your opponent activates, you can activate monster effect in response to this card activation. Send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then target one monster your opponent controls with the same card type, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum Link, shuffle it into the deck. So I like that card a lot in the deck. I think it's really good. I would I don't know what I'd play it instead of. Probably the DD Crow. Actually, no. I don't know what I'd play it instead of. But for now, but in the extra deck, you definitely play something like Entis or the Synchro Unicorn monster thing, the horse. But anyway, that's the deck profile. If you guys disagree with anything I say, or if you guys have your own opinions, or just anything you want to say about the deck profile, please let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear. I'm not the best player by any means. I'm a decent player for sure. Like, I do pretty well when I do like events and whatever, locals and just big tournaments. I've only been to a few big tournaments, but I've done pretty well. And I've done pretty well using pretty janky decks, so I'd say I'm a decent player. And I know how to deck build pretty okay, but if you guys disagree with anything, if you guys have your own opinions, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested to hear. And yeah, if you guys like the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you want, ring the notification bells for more videos. I'll see you guys later. I hope you have a great day.